Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Previous video about 2 weeks ago or so, I talked about transport across membranes, okay? I mentioned diffusion, which is the process where molecules move from a high concentration down to low concentration, so they go down a gradient, okay? They go down a gradient. I talked about osmosis, where they go across a semi-permeable membrane, which is pores in it, okay? So you get small molecules diffusing across and large ones not being able to diffuse across, so it separates them out. And I talked about active transport that uses energy from ATP, okay, to make molecules go up gradients from low concentration to high concentration. Today I thought I'd elaborate on all of these. Last time I was just giving the basic ideas, okay. So with so for the line under all that, with unicellular organisms, okay, such as a paramecium, okay, so if you have a cell, okay, that is outside and this is inside. So you have the concentration of CO2 is high, okay, and that goes to concentration of CO2 low. Okay, you have concentration of oxygen is high, and that goes to, it goes sort of down, basically goes to a concentration of O2 low, okay? So different substances can move into or out of the cell, okay? So that arrow there represents going from high concentration to low concentration, okay? So yeah, and surrounding the cell is water. Okay, so high concentration of CO2 inside the cell, CO2 can diffuse out down the concentration gradient to low concentration, because cells they respire, they have respiration going on inside them. In respiration they use oxygen, okay, which is why they suck oxygen in, but they let off CO2, which is why you get high concentrations of CO2 inside, which then diffuses outside, okay. The reason there's low concentration inside is because oxygen is always being used by the cell for respiration, okay, by the bacteria. Okay, so yeah, oxygen is always used up in the cell in respiration. Okay? So that's unicellular organisms. Okay, next, multicellular. Okay, so such things as humans and mammals. Humans are a mammal, we're a mammal. Amphibians. Okay, birds. And the list goes on. Fish. Okay, etc, etc. So the way this works is in the body, this is a very simplistic diagram, okay? Lungs, So your blood, so blood is transported from the body to lungs, okay? At this point, the CO2 concentration is high, okay? And oxygen is low, okay? When it gets to the lungs, oxygen diffuses from the lungs into the blood through across capillaries and into the blood. There is actually, the only barrier is actually capillaries. In the lungs you get very, very thin, 1 cell thick capillaries and the oxygen literally transfuses across the capillary from the airspace of the lung, the alveoli, into the blood, okay? There may possibly be another cell there which is from the actual lung alveoli, but at most you got the I'd need to see a diagram. The anatomy of this is not fixed in my mind right now, but you got the alveoli, a sac with capillaries straight outside it. So at the very most you have, the alveoli is 1 cell thick, and the oxygen diffuses across the cells, and then you got, so that's the alveoli here, that's the oxygen, and it diffuses into there, and that's the capillary. Okay, that's the alveoli. Alveoli. Okay, so that sac thing I drew is the alveoli of the lung. Oxygen, I don't want to cover it up with my pen. Oxygen diffuses across the 1 cell thick membrane of that, 1 cell thick blood vessel thickness of the capillary and blood flow, okay? So, and the CO2, of course, diffuses out of here and into the alveoli, okay? So, and then from the lungs, in here you got CO2 low, O2 high. Okay, that's in the lungs. So oxygen flows out there into capillary, and CO2 leaves the capillary into the lungs, and you breathe it out. Okay, so that diffuses into blood. I'm sorry for shaking the camera, it's a slight accident. Okay, so also food molecules such as glucose and amino acids can diffuse down the concentration gradient. Down the concentration gradient, okay? That shorthand there is my shorthand for concentration, CONC, okay? These diffuse down the concentration gradient from blood to okay, from blood into tissue, okay? So yeah, that's the role. That's the basics of multicellular organisms. So, role of cell membranes. Okay. Large molecules of food can diffuse across them slowly, but not starch. So yeah, you get sort of glucose and amino acids, but not starch, okay? Because it's far too big, starch is a very large molecule. So the cell, this is actually the important take-home message, the cell membrane, okay? The cell membrane, okay, controls what enters and leaves the cells, okay? Cell membrane does that. It controls what enters and what leaves the cells, okay? It controls what enters and leaves the cells. And the cell membranes have tiny pores, okay? Which this makes them selectively permeable. Okay, because they have these tiny pores in them, there are lots of lipids making up this bilayer, the fluid mosaic model. They are selectively permeable. Okay, small particles can get through, big ones cannot. Okay, in the liver cell, so you got a liver cell like this. Okay, and you've got, so if I can draw with that, I'm going to get another piece of paper. Okay, that's a liver cell. So you got glucose, okay, and amino acids, okay, and you got and you got water, okay, and you got protein, okay, which cannot do anything. What these arrows mean is that means slow, okay, sorry, fast, diffusion, and slow, okay, and that means no diffusion, which is crossed out, okay. So in the liver cell, glucose can diffuse through the membrane very slowly, and so can amino acids. But oxygen, CO2 rapidly diffuse in and out, okay? And water also, because it's very small, okay? But protein molecules cannot. That means protein. Protein molecules cannot diffuse out, okay? They're stuck inside. Okay? Okay, so that's the liver cell. What about red blood cell? Okay. Right, this is previously that was diffusion I was doing. This is more example of I suppose it's still diffusion. It's just a different example of it. So you got a red blood cell, which is drawing little diagrams. Ideally I would show you textbook stuff, but I can't in my videos. It could cause copyright problems, okay? In a lot of my videos I show you Wikipedia pictures, but that's not copyright issues, but if I start showing you textbook pictures and I get up to 1,000 subscribers and I start making money, there'll be copyright problems. Especially if I'm showing lots of pictures from a book, the publisher will be in the way that they find out and I might end up being taken to court, okay? So I'm only showing you stuff which either I get permission to show or is from Wikipedia. The hassle of trying to write an author and say, can I use this in videos, isn't worth it. He probably wouldn't reply anyway. But it would take ages. That's another problem. It would take ages, weeks probably. So anyway, so if I put these in pure water, okay? Pure water, okay, which means it's there's no ions, okay? There's no other ions at all. Where there's no hydroxide, hydrogen ions, no copper, no sodium, potassium. There's no salt, alkali, metal ions, no water ions, okay? So if I put it in pure water, the water passes in from the high concentration to the low concentration, okay? So you get so water passes from the high water concentration to the low water concentration. So that's low water concentration, that's high water concentration. So what happens is the cell bursts, okay? It bursts, it explodes, okay? Water diffuses into the red blood cell and it'll actually burst, okay? If it's pure water. If you have so if you have a situation of 0.85% salt solution, the cell remains normal, okay? It's fine. Because the salt concentration of our bodies is 0.85, okay? So nothing, the cell remains normal. Water doesn't go in or out, okay? There's no gain or loss of water. If you have, on the other hand, 1.7% salt, that's salt solution, SOLN, okay? You get, so water passes out, okay? The cell shrinks. That's representing it shrinking. Water passes out from the high water concentration to the low water concentration, okay? It passes out. So it actually leaves, okay? And the cell shrinks because there's more water in here than outside. So that's an example of diffusion of water through the semi-permeable membrane. Okay. Right. Next, we are going to cover plant cells. Okay. I'll leave that on so you can see it clearly. So yeah, red blood cells, if you put them into pure water, which is no ions, no hydroxide, no hydrogen, no alkali metal ions like potassium and calcium or sodium, the cell bursts. Water goes from high water concentration to low water concentration, okay? High outside to low inside the cell and bursts. So you put it into salt solution that's the same as our bodies, 0.85, the cell stays the same. If you put it into a very concentrated salt solution, the water leaves the cell and actually shrinks, okay? Right. Plant cells. Best examples I can take, if you take a bit of lettuce that's very withered, or some broccoli from a shop that's beginning to droop, and if you stick them into some water overnight, okay? A bucket of water overnight. When you come back the next day, the lettuce, if the lettuce just begins to droop a bit, become a bit floppy when it should be stiff and rigid. If you come back the next day, you'll find the lettuce and the broccoli become stiff and rigid. It's called turgid. That's because water's diffused back into the plant through the cell membranes and filled the vacuoles up, and so the cytoplasm is pressing against the cell walls and makes them stiff. Okay? that's the best examples. Try it at home, get some broccoli or any vegetable, green ones are best, that begin to flop a bit, and put them into a bucket of water overnight, and you'll get a surprise, they'll become stiff and crisp again, okay? So if you buy stuff from the vegetables from the shop that are beginning to wither, put them into water overnight and then they'll be nice to eat the next day, okay? So that's the best example. So you have, so turgid is stiff, okay? And flaccid is droopy and withered. Okay? Yeah, as I said, the vacuole rewrite swells up and presses against the cell wall. Sorry, it presses the cytoplasm against the cell wall, okay? And the cell wall pushes back and it's turgid, okay? Okay? And so the plant's stiff, okay? So that's basically how that works. You can give a quick demonstration, I suppose. If you take a plant like that, okay, cell wall, you have so if you make this swollen, it becomes sort of very round. It's quite difficult to do that, but it becomes like that. So it's swollen. Well, the other option is normal. That's meant to be the same as that. And the other option is you have sort of, so in that case it's shrunk, okay? This is the turgid. That's the turgid plant, piece of broccoli, and this is the flaccid lettuce leaf, okay? A flaccid piece of broccoli, okay? So the cell membrane side is shrunk because if that's in concentrated sugar, okay? If that's pure water, and that's just that's a small amount of sugar and water, a dilute sugar solution. In pure water, it becomes swollen. In dilute sugary water, it just stays the same, okay? And in a very concentrated sugar solution, it'll become flaccid. If you take some crisp broccoli and put it into some concentrated sugary water with lots of sugar in it, it'll become flop. So yeah, if you take some stiff broccoli or a piece of lettuce and put it in some very sugary water overnight, it'll become very limp and floppy, okay, like this, okay? So that's basically demonstrations of how it works, okay? Right, last but not least, I'm going to go into active transport, okay? Okay, I said this is using ATP to go up concentration gradient. So the famous example is the sodium potassium pump, okay? If you have basically a membrane, and then